When we experience heartbreak, it's easy to assume that the pain is purely emotional, that it's something we should simply get over. But neuroscience tells a very different story. Studies using brain imaging have shown that the pain of a breakup or emotional loss activates the same regions of the brain involved in physical pain, particularly the anterior cingulate cortex and the insula. This isn't metaphorical. Your brain literally treats emotional loss as a form of injury. That's why heartbreak can feel so all-consuming: racing thoughts, chest tightness, disrupted sleep, even a literal ache in your body. It's not weakness, it's biology. This understanding is powerful because it removes unnecessary guilt or shame. You're not too sensitive or overreacting. You're human, and your brain is responding exactly as it evolved to do. The bonds we form in close relationships are deeply embedded in our neural architecture. When those bonds are broken, your brain scrambles to make sense of the loss, often triggering a flood of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. This creates a state of high alert and emotional reactivity, which is why even small reminders of the person can provoke intense feelings. But here's the key takeaway: just as your brain responds to heartbreak with pain, it is also wired for recovery. The same neural circuits that fire in distress can be reshaped through conscious effort and consistent practice. The pain is real, but it's also a signal that the system has been disrupted, yes, but also a signal that healing is possible. Once you recognize that your emotional suffering is grounded in your biology, you stop blaming yourself and start becoming an active participant in your recovery. That is the first real step toward rising stronger. The human brain is not fixed, it is dynamic, adaptable, and constantly changing in response to experience, a concept known as neuroplasticity. This means that even in the aftermath of heartbreak, when emotions feel stuck and repetitive thoughts loop endlessly, your brain is still capable of rewiring itself. The same mechanisms that once reinforced your attachment to someone can now be harnessed to form new patterns of thought, behavior, and emotional response. But this doesn't happen passively. It requires deliberate action and consistency. Each time you ruminate on the pain or revisit memories that reinforce loss, you're strengthening those neural pathways. But the reverse is also true. Each time you interrupt that cycle by shifting attention, by introducing a new behavior, by practicing gratitude or self-compassion, you're weakening those old circuits and beginning to form new ones. This is not about ignoring pain or pretending you're fine. It's about creating the conditions for your brain to readapt. Engaging in practices like mindfulness, journaling, or even simply naming your emotions with precision can reduce amygdala activity, calming the regions of the brain responsible for fear and distress. You can also shape emotional patterns through your environment and habits: who you spend time with, what you consume mentally and physically, how you sleep. All of these inputs are signals your brain uses to rewire itself. Small, repeated choices become powerful over time. You begin to associate safety with solitude, strength with vulnerability, and hope with forward motion. This is how emotional recovery becomes not just possible, but inevitable. With conscious repetition and the right inputs, you are literally teaching your brain to let go of what hurts and to make room for what heals. One of the most underestimated tools in emotional recovery is the body. There's a deep and direct connection between physical states and mental states, and that connection runs both ways. When you're heartbroken, your physiology changes, your breathing becomes shallow, your posture collapses, your sleep is disrupted, and your nervous system operates in a heightened state of alert. These shifts aren't just side effects of emotional pain, they are active participants in reinforcing it. But here's the opportunity: by intentionally changing your physical state, you can begin to shift your emotional and psychological experience. Controlled breathing, for example, has a direct effect on your autonomic nervous system. Slow, intentional exhales activate the parasympathetic branch, the part responsible for calming the body and reducing stress. Just 5 minutes of breath work can lower cortisol, stabilize your heart rate, and signal safety to the brain. Similarly, physical movement, especially rhythmic or repetitive forms like walking, running, or yoga, helps regulate emotional circuits in the brain, particularly in areas involved with mood and trauma processing. Movement isn't just good for your body, it's a way to metabolize grief. Sleep is another critical factor. After heartbreak, sleep patterns often become irregular, which amplifies emotional volatility. Prioritizing consistent sleep and creating strong evening routines isn't just about rest. It's about giving your brain the opportunity to consolidate emotional experiences, reset stress levels, and rebuild clarity. Sunlight exposure early in the day, limiting caffeine late in the afternoon, and reducing screen time before bed all have measurable effects on your emotional resilience. Your body is the most accessible tool you have for emotional regulation. You don't have to feel okay to start moving like someone who is healing. Action drives perception. Small, repeatable behaviors, breathwork, movement, sleep hygiene create physiological conditions that support recovery. You don't wait to feel better to start doing these things. You do them to become better. Your physical state is not a passive background. It's a powerful lever that, when pulled intentionally, can begin to shift the weight of heartbreak. Heartbreak often leaves behind a disjointed story, one filled with questions, regrets, self-doubt, and fragmented memories. The human brain is wired to seek coherence, to make sense of our experiences through narrative. When we go through emotional pain, especially one tied to a deep relationship, our mind tries to reconstruct the why, often defaulting to self-blame, resentment, or confusion. But this narrative is not fixed. Through intentional reflection, we can reshape the meaning of what happened, reframe our role in it, and ultimately take control of how the past influences our future. Reflection is not the same as rumination. Rumination keeps you circling the same painful thought loops. Intentional reflection, on the other hand, is structured and deliberate. It can happen through journaling, voice recordings, or simply sitting in focused thought. When you write about your experience, not just what happened, but how it felt, what it revealed about you, and what you learned, you activate areas of the prefrontal cortex involved in meaning making and emotional regulation. This process helps detach the raw emotional charge from the memory and turn it into insight. One powerful way to do this is by shifting your point of view. Instead of viewing the relationship solely through your own lens, try to see it from an outside perspective, as a chapter in a larger story, one in which you are evolving. Ask yourself, what qualities did I show during this time? What did they tolerate that I now recognize was not healthy? What values do I want to protect moving forward? This isn't about rewriting the facts. It's about consciously deciding what those facts mean to you now. When you reframe your heartbreak as something that contributed to your growth, not because the pain was good, but because you used it, you begin to reclaim agency. You move from being a passive recipient of loss to an active participant in your recovery. That shift in perspective changes how the memory is stored, how it triggers your emotions, and how it influences your decisions going forward. The narrative becomes not one of defeat, but of transformation. And in that reframing, healing begins. Pain, when left unprocessed, can feel like dead weight, something that drags us backward, keeps us small, or closes off from future connection. But pain can also be converted into purpose. The key difference lies in how we choose to respond to it. Adversity, including the kind of heartbreak that leaves you questioning your worth, your future, and your trust in others, can become one of the most powerful drivers of personal growth, not because pain itself is noble, but because what we do with that pain determines who we become. The brain responds to adversity by searching for stability, identity, and meaning. If we lean into that impulse and begin to ask better questions, not why did this happen to me, but what can I do with what happened, we engage the parts of the brain responsible for learning, creativity, and future planning. This is where transformation begins. People who grow through hardship don't bypass their pain. They face it, study it, and eventually use it. The heartbreak becomes a catalyst, not a conclusion. Purpose doesn't have to mean some grand world-changing mission. It can mean showing up for yourself with more discipline. It can mean setting boundaries you used to ignore. It can mean becoming someone who helps others through the kind of pain you now understand intimately. When you reframe your suffering as something that forged depth, empathy, and resilience, you not only begin to heal, you become more whole than you were before. Growth through adversity also requires patience. The brain and body need time to integrate change. But if you continue to take small, deliberate actions, learning, moving, reflecting, connecting, you'll find that what once felt like an ending becomes the foundation for a stronger, wiser version of you. The pain you carry won't disappear, but it will change form. It will become a tool, a teacher, a marker of your capacity to survive, adapt, and rise, not in spite of heartbreak, but because of what it awakened in you. Heartbreak will shake you sometimes to your core. It disrupts your identity, fractures your sense of safety, and leaves you questioning what's real. But within that collapse lies an invitation, not just to heal, but to rebuild stronger, clearer, and more grounded than before. The science is clear. Your brain and body are not working against you. They're designed to adapt, recover, and grow. When you understand the biology behind your pain, when you harness neuroplasticity, when you use your physical state as a lever, and when you actively reshape your story, you become more than someone who just got through it. You become someone who transformed because of it. You don't have to rush. You don't have to pretend it doesn't hurt. But you do have a choice every single day to participate in your own recovery, to take small steps that shift the system, to reframe the narrative, and to turn pain into a source of wisdom and direction. Broken is not the end of the story. It's the raw material from which something new can be built. You are not defeated. You are in the process of becoming. And what's on the other side of heartbreak is not just healing, it's strength, clarity, and the kind of self-respect that no one can take from you. Rise not because it's easy, but because it's possible.